Hello, welcome to Wyrd Wessex.
Oh, we got to get through Cerne Abbas without laughing about willies.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Hello and welcome to Wyrd Wessex. I'm Andy.
And I'm Craig.
And today we are talking about the chalk hill figures of Wessex. And
Yes.
I
From
believe...
the UK.
Yeah, from the UK. I think both of mine that I'm talking about are centred in Wessex.
All of mine are in Wessex. But I just mean, in general, chalk figures are a UK thing, aren't they? So
yeah, there's a high concentration of them certainly in Wessex in the southwest, but yeah, you do find them dotted around. There's some up north as well. But I think you should start. You've got our favourite, I reckon, to talk about, I think.
Yeah, so the reason why we're going to do this today is, as you will have seen, we've got a new logo, which you can get on T-shirts. So the first one we're going to talk about is the Cerne Abbas Giant, which is just outside the village of Cerne Abbas, funnily enough. Did you know that, Andy?
Really? I never put
Yes.
those together.
And that's in Dorset.
Ah.
Very nice. So yeah, so the Cerne Abbas Giant is 55 meters high, and it depicts a huge male wielding a large club in its right hand and a massive 11-meter long cock. I mean, it's stunning. Have you seen it? I've been there.
I've seen it. I have seen it. I've driven past it. You know, just so you know, just then when you said like in one hand he's got a club, and I thought you were going to say in the other hand he had. I thought not last time I saw him. Give him a slap, tell him to stop playing with himself.
So yeah, so the earliest evidence for it dates to the 17th century, which is literary evidence. But there was a 2020 study commissioned by the National Trust, and they took samples from the deepest layers of the monument, and at around 1 meter in the depth, they've found that the date ranges from between 700 and 1100 AD. So it's Anglo-Saxon. Whoop whoop.
Hey,
It's one of ours. Also, the survey concluded that the willy was added much later than the rest of the figure, and it was probably originally clothed.
I did hear it was supposed. They think the original was like a legend from antiquity, didn't they? They thought it was. You've probably got this in your notes, but there was a suspicion it might have been Hercules, right?
Oh, we're jumping ahead. That's the next paragraph. Hang
on.
on.
I apologise.
Yes, where did I get to? It was originally clothed, and yeah, it's theorised that in the 1900s, a circle representing the belly button might have merged with a smaller penis, and that gives the current 11-meter long phallus. So actually, it's grown over the years.
So, if only. But so yeah, and I mean that is kind of what he's famous for, isn't it? This, I mean, it's an awesome figure. It really is a great, sort of a great thing. In fact, one of the volunteers where I work, he's insistent that it should be the Dorset flag. You should have, the Cerne Abbas Giant there in all his proud glory, and above it should say, "Dorset is very pleased to see you." I like that. I like that.
Nice.
But yeah, that is kind of, as much as it's an awesome figure, it is his sort of chalky vein cane that really makes him famous, isn't it?
I don't know if you knew this, Andy, but over the years, it's been proposed that the figure depicts different people, including Hercules.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Or Saint Edwald. Or possibly it was erected giggity, as an insult to Oliver Cromwell. But the National Trust senior archaeologist Martin Papworth says that the Saxon date places him in a dramatic part of Cerne history. Nearby Cerne Abbey was founded in 987 AD, and some sources think the abbey was set up to convert the locals from the worship of an early Anglo-Saxon god known as Helith. I'm not that familiar with Helith. I did do a bit of a Google and I couldn't find much. I think it's one of the lesser known gods.
It could be one of those things that they've just kind of grabbed from somewhere and added to these sort of antiquarians and these historians that, just think, oh yeah, that was definitely a thing. And, there is a bit of fanciful stuff in there sometimes. But yeah, I don't think I've ever come across Helith.
Yeah, so it's possible. Anyway, this guy, this Martin Papworth, thinks it maybe could be a depiction of Helith. His working theory as to why the giant doesn't hit the written record until the 17th century is that it was created in the early medieval period, and then for whatever reason it was neglected and overgrown. And then it's probably several hundred years later before someone rediscovered it. And presumably it added a penis. Why not?
I have heard that theory as well about Oliver Cromwell, sort of, a bit of a middle finger to his sort of puritanical views.
So the site was donated to the National Trust in 1920, and they still own and maintain it to this day. In 1921, Walter Long of Gillingham in Dorset objected to the giant's nudity and conducted a campaign to either convert it to a simple nude or cover its supposed obscenity with a leaf. But that was rejected as it's a protected monument. We basically got told to do one.
That's amazing.
So that's kind of the long and short of it. I do have a little bit of folklore that's associated with it. So in 1808, the Dorset poet William Holloway published a poem titled The Giant of Trendle Hill, in which a giant is killed by locals by piercing its heart. In the Victorian era, strap in, Andy, this is a good one. In the Victorian era, it was believed that infertility could be cured by having sex on top of the dong.
I mean, yeah. I could see that.
Yeah. And the only other thing I've got to say on it, I think, is that for a publicity stunt for the opening of the Simpsons movie in July 2007, they created a figure of Homer Simpson clad in his wife front pants, brandishing a donut next to Cerne Abbas.
That's fantastic.
They did it in biodegradable paint, but it displeased the local neo-pagans who pledged to perform rain magic to wash the figure away.
Oh, I've got a lot of time for paganism. I a lot of mates that are pagan, but I do think some of these beliefs, like when it comes to neo-paganism, The Simpsons is probably older than that. So, I used to go to a youth club, and with those it was a bit of an edgy one. They used to let us swear now and then, but we had the Simpsons rule, whereas if they said it on The Simpsons, you were allowed to say it.
In the beginning, God created The Simpsons.
But yeah, no, Cerne Abbas is, it's probably the most iconic one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't get over the guy that wanted to cover it with a leaf or make it a clothed figure,
But then the original, that would be restoring it if it was
This
closed.
This is true, but I'm just imagining this sort of Mary Whitehouse kind of figure that's,
It is a funny idea that it was a clothed figure that someone looked at and went, you know what, that's missing? Someone drawn a massive cock on it.
Todgers have always been funny.
It's funny to think that the church might have done it as well, to insult the god.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't imagine, anyone from a church drawing a massive chalk cock on the hill that's still there 1,000 years later.
It was a very Roman thing, wasn't it? Sort of attributing big wangs to your enemies. Basically, A, I think it sort of makes you beating them more impressive in some weird roundabout way. But B, mostly it depicts them as savages. It's always seen a sort of a savage thing to have, not a prim and proper Roman one. I don't know. But yeah, it's just, that's something you find in Roman art and sort of sculpture and stuff. The barbaric sort of tribes and peoples are always more well endowed than their Roman counterparts.
And then you think it was only 100 years ago that they think it had a belly button and a smaller penis that merged. Yeah. Was that an accident when someone's cutting it and they looked up and went, mate, I think you might have fucked that up?
Yeah, and they're like, nah, this will be fine. He'll thank me.
I must admit, I don't know if I mentioned it when we talked about the logo on the last episode, but when I first got the drawing from the Saxon storyteller, I did have to ask him to scale back the penis because it was actually bigger than the one that's on there now. Oh, the only other thing I got in my notes is that it was possibly modelled on a guy called the Saxon Forager.
Nice.
The head, I mean, the bald head, of course.
Oh, that's it. That's it. I haven't seen you running around with your club for a while.
So yeah, that is about all I have on that one, I think.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, well, I've got another iconic one. I like to think it's iconic anyway. Let me pull my notes up.
Have you lost them again?
Yeah, just which is really impressive because they're like literally right in front of me on my screen. There is another chalk carving in a hillside in Oxfordshire. It's an iconic one as well, as I say. It is the Uffington White Horse.
Are you doing a striptease?
Da 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 da.
You know this is live.
So yes, I've got my Uffington White Horse T-shirt on. It's a very very iconic sort of one to look at. You know, when you think of a chalk white horse, there are a lot of them around. In terms of hillside chalk carvings, it's probably sort of the most common one you find. These white horses, but the Uffington one definitely is the most famous. On a hillside in Oxfordshire, there is said to be a white horse and a foal that is invisible. And at night, if you're lucky enough, you'll go down to the valley below and you'll see them eating and drinking their fill before returning home on the hillside before the sun comes up.
I don't know if you saw as well that there's a nearby well that's shaped like a horse hoof.
Yes, I've heard that because this is a wandering white horse, apparently. There's a couple of other stories about it going walkabouts. Yeah, it's believed to have been dug in the Bronze Age. There's been a bit of debate about that, but most people agree it's prehistoric, most likely sort of mid-Bronze Age. It's a fantastic style. It sort of looks like it's galloping across the hillside. It's sort of the horse is very, you can tell that it's in motion by sort of the long stride that it's taken as if it's galloping across this hill. It's inspired music, poems, literature. And it's believed to be the inspiration for the banners of the Rohirrim in Lord of the Rings as well. Tolkien's he spent a lot of time, obviously, at Oxfordshire. And it's, the banners of the Rohirrim very clearly is a white horse on a green field. They think that's where he took the inspiration for the Rohirrim banner from. So the earliest reference to the site comes in the late 1300s in the Red Book of Hergest, which is a Welsh text. Near to the town of Abington.
Do you mean Abingdon?
See, I think it is Abingdon, but I believe they've actually changed the spelling. I'm pretty sure the original text spells it Abintn.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, near the town of what is probably Abingdon. There is a mountain, which is a generous, very, very generous description of the hill. There is a mountain with a figure of a stallion upon it, and it is white. Nothing grows upon it. Some scholars have compared the figure to the Celtic goddess Epona, or later Rhiannon of the Mabinogi. Now, it's hard to know the real reason for its creation, with myth and legend claiming everything from a cult for a long-forgotten deity to a monument to a victory by Alfred the Great in the area, as the Battle of Ashdown has been linked to both the Vale of the White Horse and Uffington Castle, which is a hill fort quite close to the Uffington White Horse. It does bear a similarity to the horses depicted on the coins found locally, though, from a hoard known as the Henley Hoard. Now, that was minted by a tribe called the Atrebates, which were the local tribe. These coins do have not the same, but a kind of similar-ish style to a horse on there. So a lot of people originally thought maybe they carved the horse, but in all likelihood, they put the horse on those coins.
Yeah.
Because of the horse in their territory, that, the white horse being their territory.
They claimed it.
Exactly, they made it their own. However, in 2019, workers digging to lay new water pipes unearthed a gruesome discovery.
Was it Shana Callahan?
Oh, no. Maybe. Alongside that, among the remains of a settlement that is thought to date back to around the same time as the origins of the White Horse, and they think it might have actually belonged to the community that built it. They found the remains of 26 people in the ground. Now, some of them were in burial pits. Now, burial pits doesn't always mean sacrifice, but it is linked to it sometimes. What
Yeah.
really ties it in, though, is the fact that some of them had their feet cut off and placed beside them. Others had their heads cut off and placed by their feet. And so
Zombies.
that's it. Remove the head, destroy the brain. But
Yeah.
if it wasn't zombies, it may have been sacrifice, or both. Archaeologists do believe it might be indicative of human sacrifice.
There's
Um,
a there's one they found when they were digging a road by Weymouth, wasn't there, where there was a bunch of decapitated Vikings?
yes, yes. That's yeah, sort of near Weymouth. Way it was. Oh, I forget the name of the site now. But yeah, it was like 50 of them, just over 50 of them, I think. I've seen some of them. They had a great exhibit at the British Museum, and they had some of the bodies there, and it's real horrific stuff. Like you can see, now that wasn't sacrifice. That was definitely like mass murder, probably of a raiding party that got sort of cut off before being able to get back.
They were in. Is it? I don't know which museum. Is there a museum in Dorchester?
There is. I haven't been there in quite a while, so it might be there.
We went to one, and because of rain, they'd removed everything from the display.
Oh no.
So we went all the way there to see that in particular, and it wasn't there. I'm sure it's Dorchester.
That was where they found some of them with filed down teeth that they reckon they rubbed dye into. A couple of the Vikings had that. Also, there was a lot of defensive wounds as well, like on their hands.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Where they were trying to fend off blows.
I did see someone said recently about the teeth thing is that it's actually might have been where they were passing thread through. So they were wearing the teeth way, but not intentionally.
Maybe. I'd love to do a bit.
Anyway,
back on track.
That's back to Uffington. Come on, focus, Andy.
I'm sorry, Craig. So throughout
Here's my whip.
No, you got to pay extra for that. Throughout its history, it's been cared for by locals who regularly scour the area so the chalk sort of shines nice and bright. Until the late 1800s, they actually held a fair there every few years to do it. Folk from all over the local villages would come along, they'd eat, drink, play games, and have competitions as to who could do it the quickest and how well they could do it. So during World War II, the horse vanished, and it wasn't going off for an extended drink and a munch down the valley. It was actually covered up with turf because they didn't want it to be used as a sort of a waypoint for German bombers as they were coming over to go and bomb sort of cities in the southwest.
I think quite a few of them were covered. I think Cerne Abbas was as well.
That was just because they found the schlong too off-putting. Or maybe it scared the Germans off. Yeah, so it got covered up and kind of just forgotten about for a little while. But then they uncovered it again. There's plenty of folklore attached to it, as I said. It is said that those who want to see a wish come true need only stand in the horse's eye and spin around 3 times, making the wish. I've been there, sadly didn't try that, so maybe again. Another one says that once every 100 years, the white horse leaves the hill to race across the sky to the nearby barrow of Wayland Smithy, which is where this legendary blacksmith is said to inhabit. The horse goes there to be reshod, and then it will gallop back across the sky and come down. I did think maybe we could go and try and catch it, but it happened in 2020 last. Well, actually, the last report was in 1920 of someone saying they saw it. Nothing was reported in 2020, so 21-20, I guess. We'll be around by then, I'm sure. We'll go there.
2020, we were all in lockdown. We missed it.
That's it. That's why no one saw it.
Yeah, it happened.
Yeah.
We were just all in our houses.
Or maybe the horse got turned away, you know. It's, Wayland wasn't there. He was at home shielding.
I'll tell you what, we talk about like some brutal stuff on past episode, but that Wayland story is a dark one.
Oh, it is definitely worth covering at some point.
I think because we're going to do barrows at some point, we probably save it for that.
In the 1600s, John Aubrey wrote that he believed that the site was the burial place of none other than King Arthur himself. There's quite a few claimants to that, but that was a contender as far as Aubrey was concerned. There has been some debate as to whether it's even a horse. Some people suggested it's a deer or a dog or even a dragon. The last one kind of ties into a local legend, a place called Dragon Hill, which you've got the sort of the hillside the White Horses on. Just below it, you've got a smaller flat hill, a chalk hill known as Dragon Hill. Well, it's supposedly the site, which is funny because I always thought it happened far, far away. St. George killed the dragon. That is supposedly the site, and the hill is the dragon. Well, actually, not the hill isn't the dragon. Sorry, no. There's, as you know, you've been there. Apparently, there's a patch of chalk on top of it that grass does not grow on, and it said that is where the dragon's lifeblood seeped away into the ground, forever poisoning it and stopping grass growing there. Legend goes on to say that the figure was carved into the hillside to commemorate the deed. More importantly, though, even more important than all these legends and myths, it is the site where Kate Bush filmed the video to Cloud Busting.
I'll be honest, I don't know much Kate Bush. Run up that hill. I prefer the placebo version of that.
I do as well, to be honest.
I've never been a Kate Bush fan.
Kate Bush is cool. Kate Bush is cool. But, so it's... There are other little stories. Most of them involve the horse leaving the hill and galloping around. There's nothing too dark there. Again, it is used by a local Morris troupe on May Day for dances. There are, sort of pagan meetings up there. As yourself, you've had moots there. So, did you go up to the top of the hill?
Yeah.
Did you walk, or would you say you were running up that hill?
You ain't running up Uffington Hill, have you? You've been there.
I've not run up Uffington Hill.
Dwarves aren't made for running.
No, I'm dangerous over short distances. Natural sprinter, mate. But I don't think Kate Bush was talking about that hill.
I say that all of these figures are a funny thing, really, because you go there to visit them, but once you're there, you can't see them.
No, I know, that's the thing, and it does make you think, and I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but now's as good a time as any. It does make you wonder, doesn't it? Didn't have drones back then, but it's, you can sort of see it, but the idea is you're carving something that you're not going to get to enjoy the full glory of, realistically, you have to be high up to see that.
Or you need to be off in the distance looking towards that hill where there's a hill fort on the top, don't forget.
This is true.
So was it almost a territorial marker to say there's a tribe over here?
Well, I'm going to put in now as well, honourable mention to Silbury Hill. Because while it's not a chalk carving, the whole hill it's a chalk hill,
It was meant to be white, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's covered in chalk. So, they think that would have been... Can you imagine the size of that thing? Just glowing white when it's being tended to and it's being scoured. It's a huge hill, Silbury Hill. Near Avebury, and you've got this sort of glowing white hill you can see for miles and miles. It is to impress people.
They buried a king upside down on a golden horse there, didn't they?
So the legend goes. So tidbit, there's in Marlborough nearby, there is another mound in the grounds of what is now Marlborough College. Now that is the site of Marlborough Castle. Always struck me because I used to do a bit of work at Marlborough College, but it's an interesting point. It was actually a sister site. It turns out it's much older, and that's the reason why they built the castle where it was, because there was already a great big mound there. Not as big as Silbury Hill, but I think it was sort of like almost like a second stab at it, sort of another go at making a hill that impressive. And they found that when they were doing structural work on it, just to make sure the trees on it weren't going to make it crumble. And they found charcoal deposits going all the way down, dating from the same period. So, yeah, I was quite lucky. I got to go up to the top of it because I knew the history teacher there, but they don't let people up there anymore, given it's a lot older than they think it was. But the reason I brought it up was that was apparently the local legend was that was where Merlin was supposed to have been buried, sleeping under the hill at Marlborough Castle.
And the other, you mentioned Silbury, the other one that would have been, again, not a chalk figure, but Avebury nearby.
Yeah, I think a lot of these
that was white originally, wasn't it?
Yes, and I think a lot of these things were just to impress people. We're always very quick to give massive religious significance to these things, and I've no doubt they were to an extent. But I think so much of it, like the pyramids, it's a monument. It's to impress people. That is the first and foremost point of it, is to impress people.
We were definitely impressed when the aliens came and built the pyramids.
Oh yeah, and Stonehenge.
Are we done with Uffington?
We're done with Uffington.
Because we digressed quite a bit. My candle's just gone out. Never mind.
Ghost.
It was as big as this when it started. It's burned right down. That's how long we've been here. My wine's evaporating too. We're going to go to another White Horse next. So I've got some stuff on... I don't know if it's as well known, but there's one called Hackpen White Horse. Are you familiar?
I've heard of it.
So it's actually just off the Ridgeway, next to the Marlborough Downs. I actually drove past it just yesterday. I go past it a fair amount. And it's a funny one because the slope of the hill is awkward as well. So it's not as visible as some of the other ones. But again, origins are uncertain, but it is definitely newer than your one at Uffington. I say your one, you don't own it, but...
Not yet.
When you win the lottery.
That's it. I'd like to buy one horse, please.
It is generally thought it was cut in 1838 by a guy called Henry Eatwell. He was the parish clerk from Broadhinton, which is the nearby town. Funnily enough, that's where I was coming from when I saw it. And he was assisted by the local pub landlord, which is a bit odd.
Do you reckon it was just a drunken conversation in the pub one night? I'll be
sounds
really
like
funny,
it.
mate. Fucking great idea. Let's go.
Well, they think it was to commemorate the coronation of Queen Victoria. And it measures about 27 meters across, 27 meters tall. So it's actually quite square compared to like the Uffington, quite long, isn't it? But this one's more uniform in shape. But right, there's this thing that Andy keeps telling everybody, that there's no fairy folklore in Wiltshire.
Oh.
Well, we're going to put an end to that because I found one. So, John Aubrey, who you've already mentioned, recorded that the old folk believed that fairies would come out of the hill at night and steal away human children and leave changelings in their place. I mean, that's an episode on its own, isn't it? We could do changelings.
Oh, absolutely.
And we did promise to do fairies, so we will do that soon. He also tells of a white hart that was led away on a merry dance all the way to Devizes. And also that there was a shepherd from Winterbourne Bassett that reported that the ground opened up and he was taken to strange places underground where music was being played on viols and lutes.
Ooh.
And it was almost like he got in, I don't know, I can't remember how it's worded. I didn't put it in my notes for some reason, but he kind of, for the rest of his life, is kind of almost never satisfied again. It's almost like he gets like some kind of depression or funk.
You hear a lot of that once you've been to the other world, once you've been to fairy.
It's like nothing is good enough.
Nothing tastes as sweet anymore. Nothing sounds as good anymore.
And the only other one I've got in my notes is that there was a girl in 1944 who rode her pony from Marlborough to Avebury to visit some friends. On the return home, she's coming along the Ridgeway. About midnight, she reaches the top of Hackpen Hill, and the horse refuses to continue. So then she carried on the journey via the road. Now that I've read that out loud, I realise that that's a bit of a shit story. But...
Oh, whatever, man. Wiltshire doesn't even exist.
I hope it does. Otherwise, I don't know where I am. That's about it for that one. It's a fairly modern one, so there's not an awful lot to say about it, but I wanted to include it because I knew it had some fairy lore.
And you had to prove me wrong.
I believe it's the only fairy folklore from Wiltshire. I mean, if anyone knows of any more...
I mean, Aubrey says a lot of things, man. He says, like, the White Horse is where King Arthur's grave is. Pinch of salt, you know?
Have you got any more for us?
I do. So we're going back to giants. The Long Man of Wilmington. So on an East Sussex hill, on an East Sussex hill, there stands a giant. He's not as well known or as well endowed as his kinsman at Cerne Abbas, but he stands vigil over the area of Wilmington nonetheless. Now the figure, which
should have said he stands rigid.
Oh. So this figure, it's the outline of a man holding two poles. Shush.
The rest of it's been rubbed away. There were two other guys next to him originally.
He's skiing. What are you talking about? It seems
Is that what he told his wife?
So, it seems
so mature.
Absolutely.
I think my eyes are crying.
my eyes. I'm glad nowhere else is crying. Just your eyes. It seems to put people at odds as to when it was made. So there's been some excavations in the 1800s that found Roman brick fragments, which led archaeologists to believe that it was carved sort of pre-Roman, because like the brick fragments were above it, but they might have been put there, sort of later, and just the ground might have got mixed up, so they might have been added a lot later. They're not quite sure. Suggestions were made for it being an Iron Age chieftain, to the embodiment of Orion, and a way of marking the passage of that constellation in the sky. Another theory that it's a figure of an Anglo-Saxon origin, like the Cerne Abbas Giant. There's an argument that the staves were spears, and there is a figure that's suspected to be Woden, which is on the Sutton Hoo helmets, I believe, and the Fingalsham buckle, and also the Torsal underplates and the Valsgard helmet as well. You've got similar figures. Not all of them look like that, but they're both figures sort of holding two spears. And those are to Woden. I love that idea, but I don't know how likely it is. And to my knowledge, there was no. All of those figures have also got those horns on the head that you could see on those. You know.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, that's never been found or suggested that it's ever been there on this version of this giant. However, later studies suggested, due to the positioning of the soil slippage that's happened on the hill over time, that it's actually early modern, so 1600s. It suggested the monks from a nearby priory might have carved him as a representation of a pilgrim. But the general consensus is they would have probably clothed him, and this dude's naked, albeit not with the willy. Another thought on it was a later date for the figure. It was either a political satire of the time or maybe connected to the Reformation. Again, that kind of ties in a little bit with what you were saying about the Cerne Abbas Giant. This was lent weight by an 1800s account of the giant, telling of it holding not two staves but a rake and a scythe. So yeah, in the 1800s, someone described it. Unfortunately, didn't draw it. They described it as holding a rake in one hand and a scythe in the other. There is a bit of folklore around it. So a black dog, known locally as the wish hound or a witch hound, is said to lurk above the figure. A herald of doom and woe is associated with nearby barrows that it's supposed to guard. And it also says that Arthur fought a battle in the area, and the figure's actually him wielding his spear and a sword, although that's quite tenuous, and I've only seen one source for that, and it seems quite common for chalk figures to be attributed to Arthur, apparently, especially in the southwest anyway, or Alfred. The most prominent story is one of a giant that fell and broke his neck on the hill, and the corpse eventually fading until just the outline was left. Interestingly though, one early account of the giant does speak of a figure having more features, as much as I think it was small pits for the eyes, and like a lump where the nose and mouth is as well. So I think it might have actually had a bit of build up around it, so it wasn't just the outline, it actually had sort of built up features as well. There's not a huge amount else on there. It is, again, it's a centre of power for neo-pagans. They gather several times a year to perform rituals on the site, and there is a Morris troupe that's attached to it as well. But yeah, that's the Long Man of Wilmington. I've never seen that. Actually, you tell a lie, I have gone past it once. It's pretty impressive. It's no Cerne Abbas, but it kind of, in some ways, if you're going to imagine a pagan carving on a hillside, it very much fulfills that kind of. It looks very pagan. You've seen it, I'm guessing.
Not in person, no.
Okay, but you've seen pictures.
No. Yeah, I know the one you mean. I think the dual wielding spear I find interesting. I know, like, it's on the depictions of Odin, but it's not something we generally would imagine someone having two spears.
No, I suppose a god can do that, though, you know. But yeah, no, I find it quite interesting that you have got all those depictions of Woden or Odin on those helms and that buckle, you know. Two spears, but again, you've got that sort of every single one of those. You've got the sort of the horned-looking helmet on there that you just, unfortunately, it isn't on the Long Man, because that would kind of put that matter to bed, really, wouldn't it? But
yeah, I guess it could have been lost with time, like stuff gets added, stuff gets lost, they get recarved.
What I'm hearing is that we need to go there and add some.
I mean, you would probably don't know if you get sent to prison for that, but you'd get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, probably not then.
I've got some of that coming up, though.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. So, Alton Barnes, which is, again, I mean, it's fairly close to, you mentioned Silbury earlier, West Kennet, Avebury. It's sort of in that landscape. It's a short drive from there. It's on a hill that's known as Milk Hill, and it was cut, the White Horse itself was cut in 1812 on the instructions of a man named Robert Pyle, who lived at Manor Farm in Alton Barnes. But it's believed he paid £20 to a journeyman painter named John Thorne, who was also known as Jack the Painter. And so John Thorne designs the White Horse, and he's supposed to have the work carried out. But he subcontracted the excavation work to a John Harvey from Stanton St. Bernard, and before the work was completed, Thorne fucked off with the money.
Oof.
And Robert Pyle ended up having to pay again for the job to be finished. Eventually, John Thorne was hung.
Ooh.
Although it's unclear what for and whether it was connected to running off with someone's money or if he was just that way inclined and did something else and it eventually caught up with him. I couldn't find anywhere what he'd actually done. I've written down, and this I've put in little fun facts. In 2008, the horse gained an extra limb.
Oh. Got some Cerne Abbas envy there.
In 2003 and 2014, the horse was transformed into a zebra for an April Fool's joke. So next to the horse, there's a hill called Adam's Grave, which is a Neolithic long barrow.
Famous. That's a pretty classic Neolithic name, Adam.
It's in the Anglo-Saxon chronicles. It's called Woden's Barrow. So going back to the Odin connection again. And the Saxon Chronicle mentions 2 battles taking place there. So yeah, it says in the year 592, and I quote, "There was great slaughter at Woden's Hill." Go back to that Odin reference again.
Yeah.
And Cowlin, I think that's how you say it. It's Ceawlin. He was driven out. And he was the Anglo-Saxon king of Wessex at the time. But who he was fighting against wasn't recorded. The Chronicle has a habit of this. One possibility, they think it might have been the native Britons, or he could have been fighting one of his cousins.
What was the date again?
592.
Good chance it was the Britons, or maybe,
Yeah.
We didn't even. I mean,
Fairly early one.
Yeah, but
yeah. And then there's a second one mentioned in 715. It says that there Ine and Ceolred. Again, not sure about pronunciation. It's Ceolred. And they fought at Woden's Hill. Ine being the Anglo-Saxon king of Wessex, and Ceolred was king of Anglo-Saxon Mercia. But it's generally thought that they were on the same side. So again, it doesn't say who they were fighting, just that they had a fight. There was a video I made recently. If anyone follows my Saxon Forager page, I did a short on a High Saxon burial on a hill near Devizes, known as Roundway Down. And I mentioned in that the director of the Wiltshire Museum had a theory that it's the burial of the daughter of King Ine.
Ah, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. So one other curiosity in the area that, if anyone's ever round that way, it's kind of lesser known, but it's worth a look, is there's actually a sarsen stone with a big hole in it under the floor of a 12th century church in Alton Priors. And you can literally, if you know where to go, you go in and you lift up a floorboard. It's got like a little handle, and you can see this big sarsen stone under. Why it's there, who put it there, is a mystery. Nobody knows. But it's interesting to go and see it. The church is normally open most days. It's unlocked. Whilst lacking in much fairy lore, as we've already established, there is some. Wiltshire does boast the largest number of crop circles in the country. And Milk Hill in Alton Priors is a particular hotspot. So on my first ever visit to the area was actually to visit a huge dragonfly crop circle that was positioned on the field directly under the White Horse. And it was quite an unusual crop circle as well, because it actually was done over 2 nights. So initially they did this big dragonfly, and then there was like what was often, I think, described as like an alien script or language tailing off underneath. And that actually turned up on the second night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Artist forgot to say the name.
Well, there are rumours that the Barge pub, which is just up the road, used to pay people to make them.
Yes, I've heard about that.
Which has changed hands a couple of times since. And I know there are less crop circles in the area, so it kind of does add up that might be the case.
So, going back to what you were saying about the battle there, or the battles, something I forgot to mention on the Uffington White Horse, that another link to it is the Battle of Ashdown, fought by Alfred against the Danes. And some people speculated at one point it was put there to mark that. Obviously, it's looking like it's a lot older than that now. But yeah, you get references to, like, sort of white horses there. And there's a sarsen stone nearby called the Blowing Stone. And apparently in high wind, it's got this hole in it, and it's sort of almost this whistling, sort of booming sound goes through it. And if you know how to do it, you probably want to bring some wet wipes with you. But you can press your lips against it, and if you know the trick of it, you can make a noise through the sarsen stone. But the local folklore is that his army camped there, and that's how he summoned them to battle. Was he had someone blow on this stone.
That is basically it for Alton Barnes. It's a nice area. It's got lots of views over Salisbury Plain. It's very nice. Go and watch the sunrise. I think they've started camping at the Barge pub again, so it's worth going for like a weekend. We've done that before. Go and stick your tent up in the pub. They usually have bands playing at the weekends.
So yeah, you get a lot of them do seem to be giants and horses. You get one that came in a while ago. People started doing badges as well. A few places in Wiltshire, I know, and in Dorset. You've got chalk sort of carving.
Military badges.
Military badges, yeah.
I do have one more on my notes to mention.
This is where I was going with it, actually, because there is another curious animal that's not a horse, not a giant.
And I didn't know. This is quite close to me, and I didn't know about it until you told me. So this is the Bulford Kiwi, which is a 130-meter tall, large depiction of a kiwi
I'm going
on
to
Beacon Hill.
I want to take a guess that it's not Neolithic.
Probably not. It was created in 1919 by soldiers of the New Zealand Expeditionary Force who were awaiting repatriation following the end of the First World War. Is actually one of the few hill figures in Wiltshire to be neither a white horse or a military badge, was what I wrote in my notes, but you've already done that, so... Yeah, so it was actually designed by a Sergeant Major Percy Cecil Blencarn, and he was actually a drawing instructor in the education staff. He actually sketched it from the stuffed kiwi specimen in the British Museum.
Fair.
That's basically all there is to say about it, to be honest.
Yeah. So these soldiers, they were just being bored and rowdy, and he's like, sort of, I know what to do. I know how to distract them. Let's get them carving a massive kiwi into the Wiltshire hillside.
Yeah, the only other thing I've got written is that in total there were over 50 chalk figures in the UK. I'm not sure if we mentioned that yet. A few of them are lost too, because there are ones like that we know were there, and there's some that are speculated. Like there was another similar to Cerne Abbas. There was meant to be a guy just outside Swindon.
Okay.
And over the years, because it's been ploughed and fields planted and stuff, it's kind of been lost. But there's a guy that took some aerial photos a few years back, and there's what appears to be, could be the outline of another giant who's long gone now.
Yeah, so that's about it for chalk hill carvings, I guess.
Yeah, like I say, there's a lot more we could have covered, but I think those are like the main ones that are worth talking about. No offense to the others.
I would like to do a tour of them at some point, I would like to see, I'd like to go and try turning around and wishing in the Uffington White Horse's eye, or
conceiving on the cock of...
That's it, curing my damn infertility on the Cerne Abbas Giant. But yeah, it's... there is a lot of folklore attached to it, but again, it's one of those things I always thought would have more folklore attached to it,
I was quite surprised with the lack of folklore, to be honest, when we started this one.
I did actually make a hillside figure once.
You did?
I don't know whether to admit this on the podcast. So it started off when we were teenagers. We were walking along past this industrial estate through this little bit of woods back to my mate's girlfriend's house. Now, there were some guys who built a little BMX ramp there, and they used to give a shit when she was walking past. They used to have a go at her. So we decided we'd get our own back, and we went one day and kicked down their ramps. And so then they built them up again, and I was like, right, we need to one up this. And we always got shit for being, grebos, they called us back then, sort of basically grungers, whatever you want to call it, alternative people. And so what we did, we kicked down the ramp, then with using salt and bleach in the grass next to it, we done like a 15-foot Nirvana smiley face, the one?
Yeah.
To let them know, to let them know that it was us. And then fast forward a few weeks later, we're like, that came out really well, didn't it? And everyone used to have their little tags. You used to like go to the subway or, sort of walls and stuff, and you'd have your little tag that you do. And ours was this, funny enough, based on folklore, the Mad Gatzer of Mattoon, we called him, which is a bit of American folklore. But we just used to do this like wavy figure with stink lines above his head. That was our little silly tag. We did a 60-foot one using the same method that you could see from the motorway going past. And I remember going past it with my dad about a week later and just being like, hey Dad, look left. And he just sort of done this little laugh whimper, and he was just like, was that you? And it came out really well. Not chalk, unfortunately, probably a lot worse for the environment.
I thought you were going to say that you did a massive Cerne Abbas Giant without the giant.
I mean, that would have been the obvious one, but I'd never be so crude.
It's normally what teenagers would do. It's what I would do. I'm not a teenager, but
but yeah, like literally, I don't know what the shot like Tesco's thought. We just turned up, and it's like walking out. Well, you could get away with it then. They probably think you were doing something even more nefarious now. But so, have you got any weird news for us?
I do actually. I've got something a bit different this week. I've got a big cat sighting near Cheshire.
Okay.
So A woman has captured a mystery big cat on camera in what experts are calling an incredible sighting. The strange beast was videoed by Becky Clark in a top secret, undisclosed location just outside a town in Cheshire. Actually, shall I send you a link and you can have a look at the video?
Please do.
Have a look and see what you think, because I'm fairly convinced that that is a big cat.
It's a regular sized dog, mate.
It's just a poodle. I don't know. I'm pretty
small. This one is far away. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. That is moving a bit strange. It does. It is walking a bit more like a cat, isn't it? It's got less of the lope.
On the still of the video, before I hit play, I initially thought it's a cow, mate. And then I saw it run, and I don't know. So yeah, she's actually quoted in the article as saying that they watched it for about 20 seconds. They were zoomed in on it, watching it on their phone before they realized they hadn't hit the record button. But I gather that she has a bit of a history for catching big cats on camera. And she says there's actually been a lot of disruption in the area with thousands of houses going up over the last 5 or 6 years. And now there's motorway works cutting through the green space.
Yeah.
So in the last few years, she's been lucky enough to see deer and now a cat as well. She suspects that the areas have been disrupted so much that they've been forced to move. But they are hopeful they'll see it again. And then there's a quote from a Matt Everett, the director of the recent hit Amazon documentary Panthera Britannia Declassified. You know, that series that I've never heard of.
Yeah. Funny enough, I know that series that I've also never heard of.
It's just funny that it says it's from the hit Amazon documentary series that we haven't heard of. He says it's pretty good evidence. Even without scaling, you can tell it's a large cat.
I'm sure that guy's got no vested interest in confirming it's a big cat.
He also mentions that there's leopard DNA that's been found in Stroud Valley in 2022.
See, I don't want to go too much into it because I've got a feeling we're going to do an episode on big cats at some point. But I guess what always gets me, a couple of things. One, no one ever seems to have a decent camera when they see these things. Like, they always have the shittest phone cameras.
Yeah, but then think about, like, you go, oh, look how big the moon is today. I'm going to take a picture of it. Click. Oh, it's really small and shitty.
Oh, it's different, though. It's different. The moon is very far away. And that works differently. Like, I'm going to try it out. I'm going to, like, I don't know, go get a photo of a cow or something, or some footage of a cow in a field, like about that distance, you know, sort of a field and a half away, and see how it comes out, I guess.
The zoom on these things is not that good. Although the camera technology's come on a long way, they don't zoom that well. Without a telescopic proper camera, you're not going to get it.
More importantly, we never find their bodies.
Well, because the aliens take them home again. We've been through this before. They drop them off for a wee.
With Bigfoot.
Yeah, and then they collect them. Well, actually, the Bigfoot is the pet of the alien.
Yeah.
The cat is the pet of the Bigfoot.
Yes. All right.
See?
How didn't I know before?
And the Bigfoot's actually going around picking up the poo.
Which is why we don't find the poo. As a responsible big cat owner.
And then the aliens come and pick up the poo of the Bigfoot. Leave no trace, you see?
Well,
and he gulps another glass of wine. I'm going to need more. Craig's off on one again.
I do honestly believe there may be some big cats out there. You know, I do. It's just we thought we had one at one point where I used to live. Well, sort of live. I used to do work on this vineyard just outside London, and it was sort of in the woods. There was a nearby zoo, which kind of made me think, oh shit, something got out, because you could hear like the big cats and the wolves at night. Which was awesome, but also very disconcerting when you're there by yourself. And my girlfriend swore she'd seen something. Someone else who lived nearby swore she saw something. And then we found a deer that had been chewed up, a dead deer. But then we worked out it was actually a neighbor. Someone thought it was a wolf, and they thought they saw something dragging a deer. And we found the
Yeah.
deer chomped up, and like for a moment I was like, "Fuck, it's actually a big cat! Holy shit!" Has something escaped from the park? What? But then later on, we saw it was a neighbour's Alsatian that was getting out, and I think the deer had actually just died of natural causes, and it had sort of been playing with it. But yeah, that for a little while, I thought, all right, there might be an escaped big cat here. Because there'd been some school kids nearby school that actually, and I'll go more into this probably in the when we eventually do an episode on it. But some local school kids had actually reported they'd been hissed at by a lynx, what they described as very clearly a lynx. Um, and there's a guy that lives in the same woods who's got pet wolves and two pet cougars, two pet mountain lions. Um, and I think I mentioned it on a podcast on one of the episodes before, but not
Yeah.
knowing they were there, walking along and seeing one and not seeing the green mesh in between us at first really shit me up as well. But
I don't know if we need to do a big cat episode. I think you've done all your stories
oh
already.
no, I've got plenty of big cat stories. I've got a book on it. But yeah, all right, more to be continued.
All right.
I've got some
What have
weird.
you got?
Police release a detained spy that had been detained for 8 months, a Chinese spy. They've just released them. This spy is a pigeon suspected of acting as an espionage agent. Um, yes, yeah, that's it. Well done. Now do we? That's how we teach the animals to Craig. Got to make the noises. That's quite good. This is from the Metro. In May last year, police in Mumbai intercepted the bird with what appeared to be a message in Chinese calligraphy on two rings attached to its legs. After 8 months in captivity at the city's by Sakarabai Dinshaw Petite Hospital for Animals.
I'm imagining they waterboarded the pigeon.
That's it. In a dark room, sensory deprivation. You had two like interrogators, good cop and bad cop.
Punches the pigeon in the face.
So they can make its life very comfortable. They can protect
Yeah.
it. It was finally determined that the pigeon was in fact a racing bird that escaped from Taiwan. The exonerated fowl was then transferred to the Bombay Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, who probably frowned on all the waterboarding, who set it free on Tuesday.
Oh, he's frowned upon. Fucking hell.
Pigeons have a long history of being used for espionage purposes. They've been trialled as potential candidates for active combat duties. Sergeant Pigeon. The most bizarre episode undoubtedly relates to World War II era program developed by the American behaviorist B.F. Skinner in an attempt to create a bird-guided bombing system. Dubbed Operation Orcon, short for Operation Organic Control. The goal of the program is to train pigeons sit inside missiles and effectively act as kamikaze pilots for the devices. Wow.
Whoa.
The guidance systems were basically made up of three lenses installed at the front of the small glider, with the pigeon then pecking at the screens in order to guide the explosive-laden aircrafts towards their targets. Training was conducted by putting pigeons through visual simulations, in which they were taught to expect a seed reward if they were successful at keeping crosshairs trained on images of enemy ships. It is also not the only time a pigeon has emerged at the centre of an alleged espionage scandal in India. Back in 2015, another would-be feathered James Bond was captured at an undisclosed location near the Pakistani border, placed under armed guard, just in case it tried to, take out. I don't know. I guess shoot the pigeon if it escapes. I don't know.
As a kamikaze pigeon, you probably do want to. It might like
true,
trigger a vest or something.
Superintendent Rakesh Kaushal said at the time, "This is a rare instance of a bird from Pakistan being spotted here. We've caught a few spies here. The area is sensitive, given its proximity to Jammu, where infiltration is quite common. The fate of the supposed secret agent remains unknown." So one's been released, but we don't know about that other one. Maybe it's still there in a prison cell with a long beard on its beak, and you're never going to break me.
Do you know I'm the subject of a POW?
Oh,
My granddad fought for the German army in World War II, and he was brought
really?
to England as a POW, where he met my nan, and he eventually stayed. It's a very shortened version of the story.
Oh, I didn't know you had German ancestry.
Technically, we didn't know because he never spoke about it till after he died. My auntie looked into it because we always thought he was Yugoslavian, but actually he was Serbian.
Okay.
And then yeah, they were kind of 17 years old, so
Yeah, you're
they
getting
made them. You're signing up. He became friends with a guy from Italy, and they surrendered at the first opportunity that they had. They figured that they were better off in a POW camp in England.
Yeah, no, that checks.
Yeah, yeah, that's my family history.
There's going back to the animals being used in warfare. There was I think it was the Soviets were training dogs to run with explosives strapped to them to run under tanks and blow them up. Only trouble is, you set a dog running out. What does it run to? The stranger or back to the owner? So they were going back and blowing up fucking Russians that were sending them out there. So that didn't work out too well.
But they use rats for landmine detection, don't they?
Yep. Was it the Mongols that were using birds that were ready to nest with fuses attached to their feet? And the idea was they'd go into a town and they'd go and find places to nest in the roofs, and then they'd set fire to the roofs.
Not heard of that one.
I'm pretty sure it's. I'm pretty sure that was a thing.
All right, I'll take your word for it.
To be honest, there's a whole episode on weird stuff animals have been used for in warfare. To be honest, there is some really men who stare at goat stuff.
I felt a bit like the last episode was dark enough. I'm not sure if we want to do like
they're not all
animals in warfare.
they're not all like that. You know, they used to train. They used to train dolphins to like go and kill enemy divers and stuff. But yeah, maybe we'll leave that off. Maybe we'll leave it off.
We'll see.
Not even Bluey would cheer you up then.
So yeah, we've actually got an email address. I've never mentioned it to anyone. I don't even think Andy knows.
No, this is news to me.
So we've got Wyrd Wessex, WYRD Wessex @pm.me. If you want to send us any of your stories, or if you find some weird news you think we might miss, or get in touch on Facebook or Instagram, again, Wyrd Wessex. And you can also get the Cerne Abbas Giant logo on your own merch from our Redbubble store. So, yeah, that's about it for this episode. We'll see you next time. Stay weird.
And me.